Sunnahfollowers, protectors of the Sunnah. Sunnahfollowers, protectors of the Sunnah. Inna alhamdulillah wa salat wa salam ala wa rasulullah. We're continuing with the topic of Islamic morals. And again, just to remind everyone, when we speak about Islamic morality, what are we speaking about? We're speaking about the standards of behavior and belief that is acceptable and unacceptable as defined by Allah. Allah is the one who sets the standards of behavior for us through his book, the Quran. And we follow the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in implementing that. Okay, so as Muslims, our behavior and our beliefs are governed by the standards that Allah put in effect for us. He's determined what's acceptable and what is not acceptable for us in regards to that. Okay? And one of the things that we have to understand in order for you to comprehend those standards, you have to have a mind that is free of narrow-mindedness. And I'm going to speak about that today. What does it mean to be narrow-minded? Okay, I want each and every one of you to pay attention to the definition of narrow-mindedness. It will be on the quiz tomorrow. So pay attention. Narrow-mindedness is defined as lacking tolerance or not having the mental ability to see beyond what is in front of you and recognize the underlying truth. Again, what does it mean to be narrow-minded? To be narrow-minded means to lack tolerance or not have the mental ability to see beyond what is right in front of you and recognize what may be lying underneath what you see in truth. And unfortunately, guys, most Muslims living on earth today are narrow-minded. And that's why we have all these horrible groups that are in existence today that are misrepresenting Islam. And this is why we have such enmity against each other in our communities, because we're narrow-minded. And why is it that so many of us suffer from this sick disease known as narrow-mindedness? Well, because most of us are ignorant. We're ignorant of our religion. Again, we're not taking the steps to learn our way of life. We think that just because we sit on Facebook or social media chatting with other Muslims around the world, we're learning something. No, you're not. We think that just because we're listening to people we don't even know, who are not even personable with us, speak about our way of life, that we're learning something when we're not. Okay? We have to educate ourselves. We have to learn the truth about our way of life. We also have to learn the truth about ourselves. Recognize that ignorance is something that we suffer with, and then take the steps to correct that. And it becomes even worse, guys, when you find Muslims who consider themselves to be people of knowledge, or they're in leadership positions, they're imams of mosques and all of this, but they're narrow-minded. They're still a narrow-minded. Oh, this is horrible. And this is a big problem that we're suffering with. So again, as Muslims, we have to work hard to not be narrow-minded, because Allah hates a narrow-minded person. In other words, Allah hates a person that has no tolerance. Allah hates a person that cannot tolerate that everyone else is different than you, that someone else may have a different view than you. Allah hates a person that cannot see beyond what is in front of them. You don't want to be that way. Okay? Also, when we speak about seeing beneath what's in front of you, this leads to having insight. Insight. If a person does not have insight, then that person will indeed suffer with narrow-mindedness. And how do we define insight? And again, I want you guys to pay attention because it will be on the quiz tomorrow. Insight. Insight is a rare virtue, and it's different than being ignorant. A person who lacks insight may have some knowledge, but he or she will derive no benefit from that knowledge because they don't have the analytical skills to comprehend it. Whereas if a person does have insight, not only do they have knowledge, but what else do they have? They have understanding of that knowledge. And many of you here lack insight. And that's why so many of you are having a hard time with these quizzes. You can memorize, but you have no understanding because you don't have the analytical skills to understand what Allah is saying. So because you have no insight, you're not able to understand what other people understand. You're having a hard time understanding what it means to hold a grudge and why a person who holds a grudge will never enter paradise. But if you had the insight, you'd have the ability to ponder the meaning of what Allah says and how it relates to that, to disbelief, and then you wouldn't have this problem. So people who have insight, they are in a class higher than those who lack it, even though they both may have knowledge. And what makes the people of insight in a class higher is not only do they have insight, but they have the understanding. I look at the quiz. Look at the answers on the quiz. Look at how Sister Iman answers those questions. She has insight. Look at how, even though Brother Muhammad is 16 years old, that kid is gifted with insight. He's able to understand and see what you can't. He is able to analyze what Allah is saying, to ponder it, analyze it, and then apply it. That's why it comes easy for him. That's why it comes easy for Sister Iman. That's why it comes easy for Sister Sarah. Okay? So, again, insight is something that we're all going to have to work on. Listen to what Ibn Qayyim had to say about the difference between a person of insight and a person who doesn't have it. He said one person may read a verse from the Quran and learn one or two lessons from it. And then another person may read that same verse and learn 100 or 200 lessons. That's the difference. That's the difference between having insight and not having it. Look at Sister Izdihar on our website. I can put a hadith up on the screen. Sister Izdihar can look at it and she can say, oh my gosh, this relates. She can come with 5 or 6 different lessons from that one hadith. Whereas if I give it to the most of you will just say, oh, it means this. You walk away with one meaning. Sister Izdihar had 5 or 6 meanings from that one hadith. That's because she's a person of insight. She can ponder and analyze and then implement. Again, insight is a gift. It's a rare gift and it comes from Allah. For those of us who don't have insight, we need to pray to Allah to bless us with it. Okay? Again, the person of insight is able to see more beyond the surface than a person who doesn't. So, again, guys, if you do not want to be a narrow-minded person, Ask Allah to bless you with the ability to see beneath the surface of things. Ask Allah to bless you with the ability to analyze things and ponder. Also, guys, another obstacle that contributes to a person being narrow-minded is blind imitation. Blind imitation. And we hear this term a lot, especially on social media. Blind imitation occurs when a person looks at things from just one angle and you accept what you see as fact without thinking that there may be a different side to this issue, or that the reality may be quite different from what appears in front of you. For example, the hadith about the camel hump. For those Muslims that don't understand the meaning behind that, these are people who are narrow-minded. These are people who are narrow-minded due to blind imitation. They read the hadith. First of all, they're not reading the hadith in Arabic. So the meaning is really lost. You know, they tried to translate it into English to the best of their ability, but the wording is horrible. Okay? But they read the English translation and they say the prophet says women who wear see-through clothing, their heads will take on the appearance of a camel's hump. They read that and think it means exactly that. They think that that means that these are women who walk around with their heads looking like a camel hump. But that's not what the prophet meant. Even though the English translation says their heads will appear like a camel's hump. But in reality, the prophet was speaking about the hellfire. That's how Allah will punish them. These women who walk around in see-through clothing, they will be punished in the hereafter with the hellfire. Allah will make their heads take on the appearance of a camel's hump to increase the pain. That's what's meant. But the reason why the people can't understand this hadith is because they're narrow-minded and they're ignorant and they suffer with blind imitation. They believe just what they see. They don't understand that there may be a different side to it or more to it. That's just part of a hadith. It's just an English translation that really is translated pretty badly. That's why you have to be careful with hadiths. You better learn what it says in Arabic first. You better have a person who's a scholar of the Arabic language and also a scholar of the English language convey to you the meaning. He looks at it in Arabic and translates it to you in English in the best words possible so you can understand. Okay, so blind imitation, this is something that we need to avoid. We have to understand that there may be more to an issue. There may be an other side, or maybe that's part of a hadith. Okay? And Allah himself speaks about blind imitation. He tells us that the hypocrites prey upon people who suffer with blind imitation, and they lure them into their traps to lead them to hell. Listen to what Allah says in the interpretation of the meaning. And when you see them, you like their appearance, but when they speak and you listen to them, they seem worthless. And then Allah goes on to warn against this. He says they are the enemy. So be warned against them. The curse of Allah will be upon them, how they are perverted. So we have to be careful, guys, of the hypocrites, because the hypocrites, they prey upon those Muslims who are ignorant of the religion. And unfortunately, guys, most of you are ignorant of the deen because you don't have the proper training to understand it. You don't have teachers. You have to have a teacher, a bona fide, qualified teacher to explain those hadiths to you, to explain the meaning of the Quran to you. Otherwise, you're duped by the appearance and you're duped by the speech of those who are really losers, just luring you to the hellfire. Also, guys, many Muslims suffer from blind following and narrow-mindedness because they're too concerned with quantity over quality. It's all about how much instead of the quality. And Allah speaks about this in the Quran during the battle of Hunain. He says, on the day of Hunain, your numbers impressed you, but your numbers did not benefit you.
Sunnahfollowers, protectors of the Sunnah. Sunnahfollowers,